Hey friends, today's solo trials guide is trying to simplify basic team contribution strategies, but before y'all's attention span clicks away to that Shank Mods video about that giant Japanese TV, listen up. Equip the Stag Exotic Helmet. Run Healing Rift with either Solar Hellion or Void Soul. Use whatever map appropriate medium long range primary you hit your shots with. Run a fusion rifle or a shotgun. When the match starts, look at where the zone spawns. Get to line of sight of that zone. Use your rift near cover. Now the most important step, deal damage, stay alive, and be ready to help your team. Trials is randomly match made. Even if you do everything right, you can still lose. But on the other hand, even if you do everything wrong, you can still win. Although what I said was obvious, I'll go hundreds of matches without seeing low skill players utilize that simple game plan. Instead, I see them opt for junk food 1v1 trade builds. But you have to understand that for a low skill player, winning by themselves is an unrealistic short-term goal. The best way to optimize your match contribution is to provide your teammates a consistent performance that they can immediately read and play around. The better the teammates, the more mileage that they can siphon from your super simple game plan. It's worth noting here that trials will likely change and update in the near future, so expect this guide to be recycled in some way to reflect the change. It's worth favoriting this video and rewatching it every now and then before starting a new trial session. After you gain some skill and comfort in the playlist, something I said might click the third time you listen to the video. I have a lot to cover, so I'll start speaking a bit faster to move it along, but please pardon any mistakes as I highly value not editing for longer than I have to in order to get the point across. With this intro out of the way, let's start with the easiest change a low skill player can make before even setting foot in the playlist. At the end of the day, they don't know what they don't know. I constantly see highly invested players that don't even attempt to make their build fit for the environment that for whatever reason their trials report says that they played over 100 matches this weekend. How do y'all have the time for 100 matches but not 5 minutes to check that every armor piece is providing a benefit? Like, even if you're just jumping off the map to get match credit, you could still optimize it by running a lightweight weapon and speed boots. But then again, they don't know what they don't know. Here's the cheat sheet. Don't be like this Guardian. First of all, don't forget to make sure your power level is as high as possible. Infuse that gear. For your helmet, go for at least one targeting for your primary weapon with bonus points for also having special targeting and or dynamo. On your gloves, go for one dexterity mod for your lowest handling weapon and bonus points for a primary reloader, and optional, run the throw distance mod if you'd like to throw your grenades farther and faster. Chest, one unflinching mod for each weapon. Boots, one recuperation, one better already, and one holster for a special weapon. Class item, one Reaper. If you run a dodge-based class ability like Thruster or Hunter Dodge, use Powerful Attraction. Fill the remaining slots with a grenade or melee recharge boost. What about my character's stats? Well, on all three classes, go for 10 recovery and at least 7 intellect. Bonus points if you go for 9 or higher intellect, as that does help your team ultimately win the game. On Titan, attempt to get to as close to 10 resilience as possible. Alright, I got my Guardian rolling, now it's time to go flawless. I'd say hold your horses there. You don't need to go flawless to get great loot, so let's lower those expectations. The adept version of weapons are widely overblown as noticeably better than the standard versions. They only exist for high skill players to have a marginally easier time gambling for an ideal role. The real resource bottleneck is Glimmer. That's what makes Adepts better. After going flawless, Adepts drop at around a 50% rate for wins only. To a high skill player, that means every other match they're saving 25,000 Glimmer, which is the equivalent to 10 minutes of public event hopping. That slight resource save is not worth the potentially thousands of hours they spend honing their skills to have a high enough win percentage to break even on that idea. The bottom line is that if you're not enjoying your time playing trials, for 99% of players, the loot will not be a deal breaker in having gear to clear and enjoy the rest of the game. You're under no pressure to perform a certain way. Trials is randomly match made. It's a casual playlist masquerading as an endgame cosmetic flex. Embrace that randomness as a checkup for how you stack up to the greater player base. When you want fair matches, consider trying the competitive playlist and ranking up as far as you can go. And don't let the bad apples get to you. Nobody in real life goes to the gym to make fun of people having fun at the basketball court. Brush it off, block them if you have to, and go next. If they're sincere about saying something mean, well then competitively it puts extra pressure on them to not ever mess up against you in the future. And they might eventually fold on that pressure. Well, regardless, it's still on you to keep your eyes on the prize, whether that prize be loot, improvement, or fun times. Should I play solo, duo, or trio? I'm focusing this guide on solo play, but if you have some high skill friends you can trade Grandmaster Nightfall or raid carries for, you might be able to finesse your way into the trio playlist. The game-to-game loot drops, by the way, are more abundant in the trios playlist. So now, which card should I pick? Mercy is the standard choice since on any player's first Flawless of the Week attempt, it provides extra loss protection in addition to the single loss protection it always provides. So in other words, double Mercy. If you have a lot of time to attempt Flawless, then I'd advise Mercy since after you go Flawless, you can keep the card and play games for extra Adept drops on future wins. If you're content with a single Adept drop for a trophy, choose the Persistence card. This card doesn't make you reset after losses, just keep playing until you win streak enough to complete it. But know that you cannot farm extra Adept drops after the Flawless though. It's worth noting that the Persistence card does not eat up a future double Mercy on the same weekend. If for whatever reason you completed a Mercy card and then reset or delete the card, you can simply achieve another 7 wins regardless of losses to continue farming extra Adepts on wins. The next card worth mentioning is Ferocity. If you succeed on 3 wins in a row, that card is permanently checkpointed, locked to 3 wins out of 7. Then your goal would be to win 4 in a row to achieve a Flawless card. I personally really enjoy this card because I can mentally detach myself from the outcome of the first and would-be 4th match. Mathematically, double Mercy makes more sense at first, but over the course of a full weekend of Flawless attempts though, that checkpoint at 3 wins might add up to a lot of time saved. In summary, Persistence for a single trophy, Mercy for a short Flawless attempt session, and Ferocity for a multi-day gaming session. The final card to consider is Wealth. Choose this card if you understand that your odds of going Flawless are slim and you want to optimize your drops per hour for non-adept gear. You can always focus Trials engrams during the week, even if Trials isn't available. This is the ideal setup because it completely removes the performance anxiety of stepping into a non-skill-based matchmaking playlist. Your only enemy now is farming Glimmer. Regardless of which card a low-skill player chooses, I hate to be the bearer of realistic news, but most of you are not going Flawless. I asked the website Trials Report to generate data on the question of what is the percentage of players that succeed going Flawless solo, and I asked this around July 26 weekend 2024. The answer was 15.7%. It's not a perfect analysis of the data, but it's good enough to draw conclusions on. Then Bungie had something in their TWAB that said, there is a minus 1,000 to plus 1,000 skill assessment scale. You can see the graph on screen. The following trends show true. If there's a difference of 200, that player has a 75% chance of winning a 1v1. If the difference is 400, they have a 90% chance of winning a 1v1. And if the difference is 600, it's pretty much a 99% chance of winning a 1v1. Obviously, you increase your odds of winning the more skilled you are, but the thing is, Trials is a team game mode. I doubt Bungie will ever show the data on chances of winning a 1v2 or 1v3, but my experience tells me that it's not worth investing in that skill set until you're already in a high skill bracket. Low skill players can increase their odds of winning by, let's say, saving abilities and not trying to clutch up or slow play in a 1v2. With that in mind, focus your energy on learning the strongest 3 versus 3 starts and rollouts so that when matchmaking deals you a high skill teammate, they have more opportunities for what we call high percentage plays. You have to learn to follow the basic script, the basic gameplay, before you have the knowledge and practice to not only break the script for a single 1v3, but to potentially do it 5 times to win a match against human opponents who will shift their strategy to focus primarily the strongest player while also turning the weaker players into combo fuel and diamond lances. In short, with limited practice time and effort, you're better off learning the following: strong 3v3 starts and avoiding non-contributor angles, extending your life, don't become a diamond lance, no junk food trades, and keeping your focus and mental on track. Today's guide will not feature hunter builds, and if you're curious why not hunter, although the majority of players are hunter, There's a baseline level of skill and dexterity to make Hunter a better option. For the majority of Hunter builds, they excel at allowing safer curiosity to get a play started without being hard punished. It is far easier to use the tools the game gives you to run Warlock or Titan to better punish curiosity and boredom from your opponents. If I had to give the best Hunter build option, for specifically low skill players, I'd say run Wormhusk Exotic Helmet on Stasis or Prism subclass with a slow dodge. Consider Mida or Ace of Spades to give you an extra heads up for when to run away from enemy crossfires, and your basic game plan is to always be in this like Goldilocks position while looking to start or finish unfair team fights. Goldilocks position meaning close enough to help if teammates get overwhelmed, but far enough to live opponent crossfires and or extend your life enough to give teammates an opportunity to shoot opponents in their backs. Unfair fights mean that you know you have an advantage in the form of player numbers, range, time to kill, or sound cues implying that your opponent is not immediately looking at you / pre-aimed, or maybe you have a special weapon ready before they do. In any of those cases, this build allows you to not get hard punished for a misread. If any of this sounds too advanced, that's because it is, to at least the average skill player to apply in real-time combat, which is why I ultimately recommend Warlock and Titans to best avoid too many chefs in the kitchen when, assuming that you're a low skill player, your better odds of winning are to improve the odds of your teammates' ability to find the high percentage play and or playing off your higher skill teammates' judgment. Now talking about Warlock and Titan, I'd advocate that lower skill players use Warlock strategies because of the ease of understanding the game plan and piloting. I recommend the following builds on Warlock: Stag with Well or Voidlock, Speaker with Welllock to throw healing turrets, Getaway Prism to have Arc Buddies and a Stasis turret, Osmio Prism to have 2 Stasis turrets, and Weave Walk so you're essentially invincible, but I listed that one last because it seems the easiest to misuse. Now, while I think Warlock is easier, Titans can still easily contribute by barricade reviving or just being in a good position to be revived. For that reason, I recommend the following builds on Titan: Void with Precious Scars or Crest of Alpha Lupi, and Prism with Crest and maybe a Bant or something like that, so that when you have an oh no moment, or maybe you're just throwing your barricade to heal your teammates, you might randomly catch a suspend. And then finally, Prism with Precious Scars, so when you get revived, you just get an overshield. Now regardless of which class you choose, once you notice a personal leap in skill, tweak your build and playstyle to reflect the new desired risk reward. For example, I recommend Stag Dawnblade to novice players, but it's still very strong for high skill players. The playstyle just shifts from being a fortress turret to floating off angles with burst damage weapons. At a certain point, they take off the safety gear like Stag and invest in options that let them make up for a teammate's lack of contribution. For example, maybe they choose a setup that can blow up the entire enemy team with a well-placed and timely grenade melee combo. Maybe they use Final Warning or Rat King with fast movement to catch the opponents not paying attention. So consider my recommendations a starter pack and tweak them as your needs evolve. Now, to the meat of the video, let's talk about basic strategy. Get out of your spawn area. Mathematically, you improve your chances of survival if you go to mid/the zone because it gives you 2 chances to escape by backing up to spawn, versus if you chose to sit in your spawn, you would only have 1 option to retreat before you're cornered. Play your life and control the area around, but not on top of the zone. Many players get tunnel vision on the zone, but the thing is, you just use the zone as an incentive to make the opponent move. That means you don't have to fully commit to standing on it, you just have to make the opponent think that you're willing to do that. Avoid non-contributor lanes and angles, and no long flanks without invis. What's a non-contributor lane? Pretty much your spawn, looking at some obscure angle where the opponent is not likely to appear. The opponent is way more likely to appear somewhere near that zone. Don't randomly throw grenades without having a follow-up plan. No junk food trades. Fusion rifles are not your only option. You don't have to go for trades. Use your primary and your special weapon in conjunction with abilities. Some players tunnel vision on the ease of special weapons and forget to use the rest of their kit to play basic strategy. You need to consider shotguns and fusions as a strong deterrent to getting flown at. Once they know that you're out of ammo, you won't have that safety net. If you or your team gets a kill, your new priority is preventing that revive. So rush over to help your teammates. Be in the mix. Even missing your entire magazine is still contributing to a fight if you're soaking up damage and attention and aggro in the right moments. If your teammate is invisible, don't follow them. I'm going to pause here for effect. If there's one thing you take away from this video, do this one. Navigate the map as if an invisible sniper rifle laser is aiming at you, so when you cross common lanes, jump or slide to make aiming harder for opponents. Once you cross or make it to cover, make it a habit to glue yourself to cover. High skill players often joke with the phrase making love to the wall, but in reality, it's very advantageous to stick to cover in between burst damage shots. Get angles for crossfires and bait and switch, or just match your timing with teammate challenges. Either is okay, but just all sitting on the same lane and praying might not work out for you. Get used to crouching in anticipation of the opponent's curiosity. Know that when you crouch, you go off the radar for about 2 seconds. Icarus dash or hunter dodge when making a wrong read or just to get third-person info on a lane. Don't take your super to orbit. Use it to win 1v1s or dicey 2v1s. When a round is over, use your downtime to find orbs of light on the floor or to revive teammates. If an orb is on the floor, make a mental note of where it is and use it as a health pack for a future gunfight. Don't be like me and have your mental completely tank when you see duos in the lobby. For whatever reason, the Destiny community defaults to no in-game chat for the majority of matches, so it can be a bit jarring when the other players play organized all of a sudden. Regardless, duo matches are still random matchmaking, so try your best and go next. Finally, be wary stat tracking your opponents and looking up their stats before the match starts, because unless you are very experienced, that knowledge will likely make you play more cautious in situations that you'd benefit from just sticking to basic strategy. So this begs the question then, when do you deviate from basic strategy? I don't expect novice players to be able to make any of these adjustments without a major commitment to practice. In general, you should never play to win on autopilot. You need to pay attention. If on the first round the opponents immediately throw grenades at your rift, then either hide your rift visual in the future, or, on the flip side, purposely show your rift but stay away from it to bait grenades. If the Trials map, for example, has lopsided spawns, you might not make it to a choke point fast enough to hold down the zone. Sometimes a map side might have easier access to high ground or some other advantageous position. When this happens, you have to match the pace of play to your team. It's better to have a late 3v3 than an early 1v3. If the map is giant, like Widow's Court or Eternity, sometimes double primary is optimal for contributing in more team fights throughout the match. If both your teammates are obviously throwing or in, let's say, the bottom 30% of skill, consider this an opportunity to see what happens when you break the script, when you run away from basic strategy. Try wacky ideas and see what you learn from both these successes and the failures. I cannot express how good I got at kiting enemies into triple syntheset ballistic slams or chain freezing whole teams with Shadebinder or ratting Hawkmoon triples, etc. Pretty much just use unwinnable matches as a training ground. If your enemy has an early super, expect them to use it immediately near the zone. Be prepared to do one of the following, instantly choosing between team shotting the super, running away, or trading with the other two opponents before the super takes you out. Sometimes making them waste a whole super on you makes a 2v3 possible from your teammate's perspective. If your opponent has a specific build on, you might have to make some slight adjustments. For example, the Cloud Strike Sniper makes getting a quote-unquote safe revive a lot less safe since it'll blow both you and your teammate up. If an opponent's playing Stasis Warlock and you know they have a freeze rift, then instead of rushing them down to follow up with primary damage, delay your push by a split second and it might bait out the rift, and then you just wait out the rift before you fight again. If your opponent frequently invis flanks, then I think you have two great options. Either rush down a 3v2 team fight, or stay in cover, shoot the floor so that the sound cue makes the flanker feel pressure to help his team, thus revealing his location and giving you an opportunity to put primary damage to back them down, to keep your team alive, to then team fight. The threat detector perk on heavy weapons is also worth mentioning, since it can be used to suss out invis players in close quarters when they're not on the radar. Finally, break gentlemen's agreements if you need the win. For example, I dislike that Trials loadouts are not locked. Players will swap weapons mid-round to fit an ideal range or to avoid a disadvantageous range. There's no rule against this, so if you need to do it to win, do it. Sometimes that means having a Vorpal primary weapon for when supers are ready. On a closing note, stop being mean in the team chat. Y'all asked for random matchmaking, so accept the pros and the cons. If someone critiquing me is not willing to watch a VOD in a voice chat, I don't care to hear it. And if they haven't been flawless yet and they insist on being mean to you, send them my way. I'll money match them. Could use the extra income. Anyway, I repeat that this video is worth saving to favorites to rewatch from time to time to freshen up for a new trial session. As you improve in skill, certain things I said will click and make more sense on a future watch. Best of luck practicing, and I hope that you'll find PvP to be a fun side diversion when you commit to practicing.